These buildings were designed with intention, but they leave behind no clue as to what that intention was. For centuries, scientists have been baffled as to why these buildings were made. Let's explore 15 unusual buildings with no known purpose. Starting with number 15, the Kaimanawa Wall. In the central North Island of New Zealand, just south of Lake Taupo, lies a peculiar stone formation known as the Kaimanawa Wall. It's located near the State Highway 1 and the Forest Park. This structure appears to consist of large, neatly fitted stone blocks aligned in what seem to be horizontal courses. The geometry of these stones features what look like straight edges and 90-degree angles, and it sparked speculation that the formation might be artificial, possibly a wall or terrace built by a forgotten civilization. However, no academic consensus exists about its origin, and the prevailing scientific view holds that it's a natural geological formation. This wall gained public attention in the early 1990s when photographs of the stones began to circulate in newspapers and fringe archaeological circles. Enthusiasts noted that the blocks resembled the megalithic masonry seen in places like Peru or even Easter Island, particularly in the apparent tight-fitting joints and large scale. Some suggested the stone showed evidence of human shaping and engineering, pointing to straight seams and angular connections between the blocks. Geologists and archaeologists have since visited the site, and they offered a more grounded explanation. According to Peter Wood, a geologist with the Institute of Geological and Nuclear Sciences in New Zealand, the formation is composed of ignimbrite, a volcanic rock formed from compacted pyroclastic flow. Under specific cooling conditions, ignimbrite can fracture in roughly orthogonal patterns, producing the appearance of blocks. Wood noted that there are no signs of chisel marks, carvings, or quarrying, and no cultural artifacts have ever been recovered nearby to suggest any past human activity. The Department of Conservation, which manages the land around the wall, supports this natural explanation, and the site hasn't been formally excavated or declared archaeologically significant, and no heritage protections have been applied. Nevertheless, it continues to attract attention from visitors and independent researchers. Despite decades of informal investigation, there's been no peer-reviewed geological study dedicated exclusively to it. Most available assessments are based on surface-level observations, and as a result, the Kaimanawa Wall occupies an ambiguous space. It's a visible, tangible structure that defies easy classification, and for now, it lacks the empirical evidence needed to confirm any theory beyond the prevailing geological one. Whether a natural quirk or a misinterpreted relic, it stands as a quiet mystery on the New Zealand landscape. Number 14, the Plain of Jars. Scattered across the central plains of Laos lie thousands of stone jars, some weighing several tons. These megalithic jars are found at over 90 distinct sites and are typically carved from sandstone, granite, or conglomerate rock. While the Plain of Jars is widely recognized as an archaeological site, what remains unresolved is the purpose of the structures and the cultural logic behind their placement. The jars themselves are empty. Most are hollow cylinders with flat bases and no inscriptions, and their intended function is still debated. The jars vary in height, typically between 1 and 3 meters, and they appear in clusters, sometimes numbering in the hundreds. Some sites are positioned on hilltops, while others are located in valleys. The largest site, known as Site 1, contains over 300 of them and several stone discs, some of which may have served as lids. However, many of the jars have no associated covers, leading to further uncertainty about how they were used. Initial surveys were carried out by French researcher Madeleine Colani in the 1930s. Based on her excavation findings, she hypothesized that the jars were used in ancient funerary rituals, perhaps to hold bodies or a form of secondary burial. Human remains, including teeth and bone fragments, have been discovered in and around some of the jars, alongside beads, ceramic fragments, and tools. This has lent some support to the mortuary theory, but the evidence is not comprehensive nor consistent. Another theory suggests the jars were used for food or water storage, or even as fermentation vessels. Some local legends claim that giants created the jars to brew rice wine after a military victory. However, no residue analysis has proven that they were used for these purposes, and the presence of cremated remains suggests at least some mortuary function. Dating the jars is also a challenge. Most estimates place their origin between 500 BCE and 500 CE, based on radiocarbon evidence from nearby habitation sites. However, since the jars themselves contain no datable organic material, this range is still an approximation. Another complicating factor is the presence of unexploded ordnance from U.S. bombing campaigns during the Vietnam War. Many of the jar sites are still being cleared by international demining teams, which limits the scope of excavation and preservation efforts. The difficulty in accessing and studying the jars has hindered archaeological consensus. The jars still remain one of Southeast Asia's most enduring enigmas, its massive, silent, immovable structures that were clearly meaningful to their builders, though what they meant or were meant to do is still an unknown. Number 13. The Osiron. At the ancient site of Abydos in Upper Egypt, partially buried beneath layers of desert and sand and millennia of settlement, lies a structure known as the Osiron. It's located directly behind the Temple of Seti I. This building has puzzled Egyptologists for over a century. Massive granite blocks, some weighing over 40 tons, form the central hall, which is surrounded by a trench once filled with water. Despite being discovered in the early 20th century, the Osiron's true purpose and original construction date remain unclear. It was first excavated by archaeologists Flinders Petrie and Margaret Murray in 1902. Upon exposure, its design and materials appeared out of step with the surrounding complex. Unlike the finely carved limestone used in Seti I's temple, the Osiron was built with coarse granite, arranged in large formations that lacked decorative inscription. This difference led some researchers to suggest that the Osiron might predate Seti's temple entirely. However, since it's accessed through a corridor linked to the Temple of Seti I, other scholars argued that the two were constructed contemporaneously. One of the most perplexing features of it is the water trench. The central hall is set below current ground level and was designed to be surrounded by water, possibly creating a symbolic island within the structure. Some researchers have speculated that it served as a symbolic tomb of Osiris, the Egyptian god of the underworld, representing his burial and resurrection. But the architectural elements of the Osiron stand apart from other religious structures. Its column bases are massive and plain. The construction style evokes an archaic or even pre-dynastic aesthetic, which has led some to theorize it could be of later reuse of an older structure. Modern studies continue to analyze it, but definitive conclusions remain elusive. Some have pointed out that Seti I might have deliberately ordered the construction in an archaic style to evoke reverence for Egypt's ancient past. Others suggest the water feature could have been used in funerary rituals or purification ceremonies, but again, it all remains hypothetical. In the absence of any clear answers, the Osiron holds its place in Egypt's many unresolved mysteries. It's a structure that defies classification. It's massive, ancient-looking, and it's clearly important in its time, yet lacking the usual markers that define purpose in Egyptian architecture. Whether it was a symbolic tomb, a ritual basin, or something else entirely, the Osiron remains a monument without a known purpose. Number 12. The Yonaguni Monument. Just off the coast of Japan's westernmost inhabited island is a massive underwater structure that has sparked debate among geologists and archaeologists since its discovery in the 80s. Referred to as the Yonaguni Monument, this rock formation is made up of flat angular surfaces that some observers claim resemble steps, terraces, ramps, and platforms. The monument sits about 25 meters below the ocean's surface, and it stretches for more than 100 meters. Local diver Kiichiro Aratake discovered the site in 1986, and it soon drew the attention of Japanese marine geologist Masaki Kimura, who has been its most prominent researcher. Kimura argues that the structure shows evidence of tool marks, straight edges, right angles, and stair-like features, suggesting it could be the remains of a man-made complex. However, most geologists reject the idea of human construction. The majority opinion is that the monument is a natural formation. There's no physical evidence like tools, carvings, pottery, or even skeletal remains directly associated with it, and no verified artifacts have been found in or around the structure. Kimura has claimed to have identified symbols, roads, and even animal-shaped carvings at the site, but these findings haven't been verified or accepted by the broader community. Subsequent dives by independent researchers have yielded no consensus that would support the monument being artificial. Critics argue that pareidolia, the tendency to see familiar patterns in random data, is responsible for many of the interpretations. Despite the controversy, though, the Yonaguni Monument is notable for how it blurs the line between natural and potentially human-made formations. It may ultimately be a rare geological anomaly shaped by tectonic forces, but for now, it remains one of the most debated underwater formations in the world, with no widely agreed-upon explanation. Number 11. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Scattered across the Diqui Delta and the Isla de Caño in southern Costa Rica are over 300 nearly perfect stone spheres, some weighing up to 15 tons. Known locally as Las Bolas, these objects were first documented in the 1930s when land was being cleared for banana plantations. The spheres are carved from gabbro, a hard igneous rock, and they range in size from just a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter. Despite decades of research, no definitive explanation exists for who made them. Most archaeologists agree they were created by the pre-Columbian Diqui culture, sometime between 600 and 1500 CE, but no written records survive. What makes the mystery even more difficult is that most of the spheres have been moved from their original locations. Early looters, settlers, and even banana plantation operators rolled them away or dynamited them in search of gold rumored to be inside. Very few of them have been found in undisturbed contexts, making it hard to determine their original placement or role. Researchers using laser scanning and other precision measurement tools have confirmed the sphere's remarkable uniform geometry. Some are within a few millimeters of perfect roundness, which is impressive considering the likely use of stone tools. No tools used in their construction have been recovered though, and no quarry sites have yielded any partial examples. The Costa Rican government has protected many of the remaining spheres, and in 2014 UNESCO declared the sites associated with them as a World Heritage Site. However, this recognition doesn't bring clarity to their meaning. Unlike megalithic tombs or pyramids, the spheres contain no carvings, inscriptions, or chambers, nothing that provides a narrative or a function. Today, the spheres are generally regarded as national symbols of Costa Rica, appearing in art, logos, and public monuments. Yet for all their prominence, they remain one of the most perplexing pre-Columbian legacies, purposefully shaped, carefully arranged, and still without a known purpose. Number 10. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. Discovered accidentally in 1902 during construction work in Malta, the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is an underground structure carved into limestone. It was dated to between 4000 and 2500 BCE. It is one of the oldest known subterranean sites in the world. Complex spans 3 levels featuring chambers, passageways, and details mimicking those seen in above-ground buildings. Although commonly referred to as a necropolis, with some 7,000 human remains found during early excavations, the Hypogeum defies straightforward classification. Some chambers lack any funerary remains, others exhibit sophisticated acoustic design, particularly the so-called oracle room, where sounds made at certain frequencies resonate throughout the entire complex. The layout suggests a level of planning not typically associated with Neolithic societies. The innermost rooms are accessible only through narrow tunnels or steep drops, which does suggest a ritual or symbolic significance. Yet no wall carvings or written language have been discovered there that might clarify the purpose. Adding to the mystery, several unique artifacts were found during excavation, including elaborately carved figurines and red ochre wall markings. The most famous of these was the sleeping lady figurine, thought to represent a female figure in repose or meditation. While intriguing, none of these artifacts provide a definitive answer about what the Hypogeum was truly used for. Only a limited number of visitors are allowed each day, and sections are closed for conservation. And despite modern techniques, much of what was originally found in the early 1900s is poorly documented or missing, making reinterpretation difficult. It may have been part temple, part tomb, part sound chamber, or something else entirely. Without any written records, we may never fully understand its builder's intentions. But the Hypogeum remains an example to an ancient people whose capabilities far outpaced what was once thought possible. Number 9. The Sajama Line, Stone Structures. In the Altiplano of Bolivia, near Sajama National Park, is one of the largest and least understood geoglyph networks on Earth, known as the Sajama Lines. Spanning over 22,000 square kilometers, the lines themselves are shallow grooves etched into the ground, some of them stretching for up to 20 kilometers in perfectly straight lines. But along and between these lines are small, often overlooked man-made structures, low stone platforms, cairns, and circular enclosures that archaeologists have struggled to interpret. While the lines are typically the focus of attention, these associated buildings add another layer of mystery. Some appear to be lookout posts or platforms, others may have served as shrines or altars. However, there's no conclusive function has been determined for any of them. Unlike nearby Inca or Amara sites, these structures are mostly devoid of pottery, tools, or burials. Without these contextual clues, it's difficult to link them to any known culture. Adding to the mystery is the relative lack of attention these formations have received. Despite being larger in total area than the Nazca Lines, the Sajama Lines and their associated buildings were only formally documented in the 20th century and remain under-researched to this day. Satellite imagery has helped map their full extent, but not their purpose. To date, no academic consensus exists on the original purpose of the stone structures found along the Sajama Lines. They're not easily classified as tombs, dwellings, or temples. They occupy a space in a religious landscape, yet don't yield clear ritual artifacts. They are, for now, just as silent and stubborn as the straight lines they stand beside, markers of a purpose we still don't understand. Number 8. The Unfinished Pyramid of Zoyet al-Arian. Located between Giza and Abu Sir, the unfinished pyramid of Zoyet al-Arian is one of Egypt's least known and most puzzling pyramid sites. Unlike the grand structures of Giza, this one consists of a rectangular pit carved deep into the bedrock, surrounded by what appears to be the foundations of a massive, never-completed pyramid. Despite its proximity to Cairo and major sites, the structure remains almost completely unexplored. The site is referred to as the Layer Pyramid or Unfinished Pyramid, and it dates back to Egypt's 3rd dynasty, that's around 2700 BCE, possibly during the reign of King Kaba. However, no inscriptions or royal cartouches have been found to confirm the identity of the builder. The lack of decorative elements or internal chambers complicates efforts. One of the most distinctive features of the site is the subterranean chamber at the center of the excavation. This chamber includes an unusually large and finely cut quartzite sarcophagus carved from a single block of stone. The lid is missing, and the chamber was empty when first examined by archaeologists. Some have speculated that this chamber was meant to serve as a burial vault, but no human remains or grave goods were ever discovered. Curiously, the structure shows signs of precise engineering and planning. The central trench is aligned with notable accuracy, and limestone blocks were prepared for cladding, suggesting the builders had intended to complete a pyramid of significant size, but the construction seems to have halted suddenly for reasons unknown. The lack of identifying evidence here has led some researchers to suggest that it may not have been a pyramid at all, but a ceremonial platform or symbolic construction. To further complicate study, the entire site has been under military control for decades, with limited access for even accredited archaeologists. This has prevented modern scientific examination, dating, or remote sensing. What little information exists comes from early 20th century surveys. Without access or new data, the unfinished pyramid of Zoyet al-Arian remains an anomaly. It clearly served some function during the early dynastic period, and it was significant enough to warrant large-scale excavation and investment. Yet in the absence of inscriptions, artifacts, or completion, its true purpose remains unknown. Moving on to number 7, the Seshath Hall of Records. Within the ancient temple complex of Abydos, one of Egypt's oldest sites, lies a chamber referred to by some Egyptologists as the Seshath Hall, due to inscriptions associated with the Egyptian goddess of writing and record-keeping. Located beneath or adjacent to the temple of Seti I, this space has been puzzling researchers for over a century. Although its surrounding temple was built during the 13th century BCE, the site itself has layers of construction dating back to the early dynastic period and possibly before. Abydos was long revered as a cult center for Osiris, but this particular chamber doesn't seem to align with known Osirian rituals or mortuary practices. The architecture here is tight, almost restrictive, and doesn't follow the layout of hypostyle halls, offering rooms, or chapels. Some carvings within the chamber include peculiar cartouches and abstract forms, many of which have suffered erosion, leaving their meaning uncertain. Despite being cut carefully into sandstone and limestone, no artifacts or funerary items have been found. The room also lacks any altars, statuary bases, or drainage systems that would suggest offerings or embalming. French archaeologist Auguste Mariette and later Flinders Petrie both noted the chamber in their early studies of Abydos, but neither was able to assign a definitive purpose. The 20th century Egyptian Antiquities Organization also logged it during restoration work, but left it unclassified. More recent digital mapping of the Seti temple complex has confirmed its existence, but no new excavations have happened due to the site's religious sensitivity. There is no known reference to the room in any surviving Egyptian texts. No papyri, stelae, or temple inscriptions mention its use or even meaning. This lack of written context makes it stand out in a culture that had meticulously documented religious structures. The association with the goddess Seshath is based purely on the presence of a now eroded depiction that may show her emblem. However, this is far from conclusive and other interpretations have been proposed. Until further excavation or imaging reveals more, the Seshath Hall at Abydos remains one of Egypt's most enigmatic internal structures. A purpose-built chamber, surrounded by symbolism, yet silent in function. Number 6. The Great Platform at Baalbek. In the ancient city of Baalbek in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, an immense stone platform lies beneath and behind the Temple of Jupiter. Known informally as the Great Platform, this substructure is made of some of the largest stones ever used in construction, several blocks weighing over 800 tons, with one estimated at more than 1,000 tons. The platform's visible parts consist of 3 colossal stones known as the trilithon, but further excavation has revealed an extended foundation of similarly massive stones beneath and adjacent to them. Despite the scale, this platform's original function remains undocumented and unexplained. Roman construction of the Temple of Jupiter happened during the 1st century CE, but archaeologists have long noted that the platform predates the Roman temple. Its style, technique, and integration don't match Roman engineering. The Roman builders constructed their temple on top of this platform, not as part of it. This implies the Great Platform was already in place when Roman engineers arrived. No inscriptions or carving have been found on the blocks to clarify their origins. The stones were quarried from a nearby site less than 1 kilometer away. Some unfinished blocks still lie in the quarry, including the well-known Stone of the Pregnant Woman and Stone of the South. The logistics of transporting and placing these completed stones into such a precisely leveled platform remain unexplained. Some scholars have proposed that the Great Platform may have been part of a previous temple or ceremonial site used by earlier cultures in the Levant. Others suggest it was a foundation for a megalithic construction project that was never completed. However, these are hypotheses lacking direct evidence. No associated altars, staircases, or cultural artifacts have been uncovered within the platform structure itself. Excavations in the 20th and 21st centuries have revealed additional layers and retaining walls beneath the trilithon, but these too lack any decoration or labeling. Unlike storage foundations or water basins, the space within the Great Platform has no internal chambers, no drainage features, or airflow. Its role remains limited to a silent, colossal foundation without a known superstructure beyond the Roman additions. Despite being visible, accessible, and extensively photographed, its intended purpose, religious, structural, ceremonial, or otherwise, remains undocumented by any culture that might have created it. As such, it is a fully real, historically verified building feature with no confirmed use. Number 5. The Longyou Caves in Zhejiang, China. Discovered in 1992 near the village of Xi'an-Beikun in Zhejiang Province, the Longyou Caves are a set of at least 24 hand-carved sandstone caverns covering more than 30,000 square meters. Locals accidentally discovered the site while draining a water-filled pond they believed to be natural. What emerged was a massive, precisely chiseled underground space with evenly spaced pillars, uniformly straight walls, and smooth ceilings, carved entirely by hand from solid bedrock. The caves have been dated to around 2,000 years ago, possibly during the Qin or Han dynasties. Based on nearby archaeological finds and construction methods, however, no written records, imperial, local, or folkloric, mention the caves. This is highly unusual in a culture with detailed administrative histories and records of major engineering projects. Not even ancient pottery or oral tradition refers to their existence. Each chamber varies in size but averages about 30 meters in length, 20 meters in width, and about 10 meters in height. Intriguingly, all the interior walls are covered with parallel tool marks, suggesting a consistent and methodical process. There's also staircases, platforms, and support columns, indicating the builders intended the caves to be used, not merely quarried. Engineers also have expressed astonishment at the cave's structural integrity. The caverns are self-supporting, and after more than 2 millennia, they show no signs of collapse or significant erosion. The level of precision and labor required suggested centralized planning and coordination, but no imperial decree, guild record, or local taxation document has surfaced. Chinese researchers have proposed numerous uses: ceremonial spaces, secret military shelters, or elite residences, but again, no evidence has confirmed any of these ideas. To this day, the Longyou caves remain open to the public as a historical site, but their builders and their purpose remain completely unknown. They stand out as one of the most mysterious man-made subterranean structures, undeniably real, meticulously made, and historically invisible. Number 3. The Erdstall Tunnels, Central Europe. Scattered beneath rural fields and forests across Austria, Germany, and the surrounding regions, hundreds of narrow, hand-carved underground tunnels known as Erdstalls have baffled researchers for centuries. Typically just large enough for a crouching adult to crawl through, these passageways stretch for short distances, usually under 50 meters, and sometimes include small alcoves or chambers. They appear to have been dug with primitive tools, and in most cases they don't lead anywhere. The true number of Erdstalls is unknown, and many have collapsed, been sealed off, or are hidden in private lands. In Austria alone, over 500 such structures have been catalogued, with clusters appearing in Upper Austria and Bavaria. Radiocarbon dating of surrounding material often suggests a construction period between the 10th and 13th centuries, but there's no contemporary written records describing their purpose. One of the strangest features of the Erdstalls is the Schlupf, a narrow, rounded opening connecting two tunnel segments, often no wider than 40 centimeters. These force anyone passing through to contort their body and crawl in the dark, making the tunnels entirely practical for transportation, storage, or habitation. Theories about their function range from ritualistic use to hideouts, smuggling routes, or escape passages. They contain no defensive features, no significant artifacts, and no traces of fire, food storage, or long-term human occupation. Some have suggested that the tunnels might have served as penitential routes for religious rituals, with the tight passages representing symbolic rebirth or spiritual cleansing. However, no church records or liturgical texts from the time period mention such a practice. Others speculate they may have been used for short-term refuge from bandits or invaders, but again, the structures and location of the tunnels make this improbable. The tunnel's uniformity across large regions with similar construction, dimensions, and dead-end layouts suggests a common tradition or a cultural impulse, yet no such culture is known to have documented or passed down any reference of them. Today, researchers continue to catalog and study these subterranean networks, but despite decades of excavation and review, the true purpose of the Erdstalls remains unknown. Number 2. The Fortresses of Kuelap, Peru. In the cloud forests of northern Peru, resting on a ridge at an elevation of around 3,000 meters, lies one of the largest and most mysterious archaeological complexes in South America, Kuelap. Often overshadowed by the fame of Machu Picchu, Kuelap is a massive walled city built by the Chachapoya civilization, sometimes referred to as the Warriors of the Clouds. While its size, complexity, and achievements are extraordinary, the purpose of Kuelap remains disputed. Was it a fortress, a ceremonial center, a population hub, or something else entirely? It was constructed beginning around 500 CE and occupied until the Spanish conquest in the 1500s. The main structure is a gigantic stone platform over 600 meters long and 20 meters high. The walled city contains more than 400 stone buildings, many of them circular with intricate friezes and carvings still visible. Despite the dense layout, the exact purpose of the site as a whole is still unclear. One of its most striking features is the fortress-like appearance. The sheer exterior walls and limited narrow entrances seem designed for defense. Two of the main entrances taper dramatically inward, forming tight bottlenecks, passageways just wide enough for one person at a time to enter. This has led many scholars to conclude that it functioned primarily as a military fortress, built to protect the Chachapoya people from rival cultures. However, several details complicate this interpretation. First, while the walls are massive and imposing, they lack common defensive features like parapets, battlements, or towers. There's also little evidence of barracks, weapon caches, or other infrastructure typically associated with long-term military garrisons. Further complicating the pictures, many of Kuelap's structures show signs of astronomical alignment. Some doorways and windows are oriented to capture sunlight during solstices, and certain corridors are laid out in ways that suggest symbolic importance. Another theory posits that Kuelap was a status-driven city for elites, a kind of mountaintop enclave for the upper class of the society. Evidence of specialized pottery and textiles found in the area also suggest a high degree of craft specialization, typically associated with centers of political power. One persistent mystery surrounding it is how it was all built. The limestone used in construction was likely quarried nearby, but the scale and precision of the stonework, especially in a high-altitude environment, is extraordinary. The closest historical records come from the Inca and Spanish sources, which mention the Chachapoya as a distinct culture. These outside accounts don't clarify Kuelap's purpose either. Inca chronicles describe the Chachapoya as skilled warriors and highland dwellers, but say little about the function of the other major cities. Modern estimates suggest that Kuelap could have housed about 1,500 to 3,000 people, but the layout of the structures, mostly small single-room dwellings, suggests short-term seasonal occupation. Recent excavations have revealed some intriguing new anomalies, including sealed chambers, doubled walls, and internal platforms that don't correspond with known Inca or Chachapoya designs. While these findings are still under analysis, they've revived interest in the idea that Kuelap served multiple overlapping purposes: military, ceremonial, and elite residential over the centuries. But perhaps the most enduring aspect of its mystery is how it compares to other ancient Peruvian sites. Unlike Machu Picchu, which was well-documented Inca origins and clearly a hierarchical layout, Kuelap lacks inscriptions, royal tombs, or any signature architectural elements. Despite modern technology, it remains a riddle in stone. Each excavation brings more questions than answers. Why design it with such complexity and yet leave it behind with no markers of who led, lived, or worshipped there? Without textual records, coins, or definitive grave markers, researchers are left only with the architecture and its fragmented material culture. In the end, this place is a puzzle of purpose, a monumental achievement whose meaning has faded with time. Whether it was a fortress, a temple, city, or some blend of all three, it reminds us that the material traces of civilization can persist long after its culture had vanished. Number 1. The Waffle Rock Structure in West Virginia. Located near the shorelines of Jennings-Randolph Lake in Mineral County, West Virginia, the Waffle Rock is a massive slab of stone with a distinctive grid-like or waffle-shaped pattern etched on its surface. Measuring several meters across and originally part of a larger outcrop, this stone was partially relocated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers during dam construction in the 1970s. The bizarre pattern has intrigued geologists for decades, with no definitive explanation for its origin or purpose. While many geologists suggest the waffle pattern is a natural formation, possibly caused by iron oxide-rich sedimentary layers cracking and weathering over time, others point out that the regularity and straightness of the lines, the pattern consists of crisscrossing grooves that create repeating rectangular and diamond shapes. There are no carvings, inscriptions, or signs of tool marks definitively linking it to human construction, yet the symmetry of the pattern has led to speculation that it could be man-made or even modified by prehistoric people. Some early accounts have even speculated about Native American influence or a connection to unknown ancient civilizations, but no supporting archaeological context has ever been found. Adding to the mystery is the lack of other similar formations in the area. No adjacent rock layers show the same patterning, and there's no records of comparable geological formations nearby. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers preserved a large piece of the rock as a monument near the lake's visitor center, where it remains on public display, accompanied by an official plaque acknowledging its unusual nature. Despite decades of analysis and several studies, there's still no universal agreement on whether the Waffle Rock is a unique quirk of geology or something shaped by human hands for a now lost purpose. It stands today as a solitary enigma, a patterned surface with no known function, context, or parallel anywhere else in the region.